Hello, everyone. My name is Marina. Thank you for coming to my channel. I'm here with a friend, former student, and colleague that I admire, Broqachel Wu. She's a managing lawyer at Wada Law Firm, I guess. And she is going to introduce herself and talk a little bit about who she is and who she does. But for those who don't know me, I'm an immigration consultant, and I work with several different types of cases of immigration, from visas to permanent residence, citizenship, spousal sponsorship, so on and so forth. I'm also an educator, and that's where I met this smart cookie. And I am wanting to bring her here today to talk about criminal aspect of immigration. So where crime meets immigration, basically, and what happens. Broqachel, go ahead.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Broqachel Wu. I'm currently a managing lawyer with the Law Mustafa Sheikh's criminal law firm. I mostly practice in criminal law, but I also helping people navigate the complications between criminal law and immigration law. So a lot of my clientele are people who are not citizens in Canada who are also facing criminal charges or have been convicted of a crime in Canada.
Because it happens, and it happens a lot. And that was actually the reason why I wanted to talk to you, because I've been having some interesting situations coming across. Of course, somebody could be outside of Canada and have a criminal conviction, or not even have had a conviction, but just an offense. And then they're trying to immigrate to Canada. So whenever you're trying to immigrate to Canada, you're going to be requested a police certificate. But sometimes it happens that you're already here, either as a worker, as a student, or even as a permanent resident, and something happens. So I'll give you a couple of examples of things that I see a lot. So driving under the influence, that's a big one. I think that's probably the main one. And I would want you to tell me a little bit the impacts of that one, because I think that's, I think the main, I don't know, I ask you, is that the main, like the most common offense you see?
Yes, as a criminal lawyer and an immigration lawyer, that is definitely 50% of the criminal inadmissibility cases I deal with, because a lot of people who come to Canada, especially foreign nationals, they don't realize that impaired driving is a serious offense, and that could render them inadmissible under our serious criminality. So, what in simpler terms, it means serious crime. So
Mhm.
for foreign nationals, anyone who's not a permanent resident, could be automatically deported because of such offense. Because impaired charges are actually the only one of the only charges in Canada that still has a statutory minimum in existence, and their statutory minimum is a fine, and the fine, it equals a conviction. And in Canada, as long as you get a conviction for foreign national, you're rendered inadmissible if it's not a straight summary offense, which is the majority of our criminal code offenses. I would say that's over 90%. And
So, is there in any situation where driving under the influence could not be? So, just let's explain what inadmissibility is to people. What is it?
inadmissibility means you're facing a deportation order.
Okay.
Um, in a very simple terms, from the immigration Canada.
Mm-hmm. So
And
you're not allowed to be in the country, basically, or you shouldn't be allowed to be in the country.
exactly. For impaired driving, for foreign nationals, it's basically impossible, unless your criminal lawyer can negotiate a deal into a guilty plea to something else because of that minimum. Now, for PRs, it's a complete turner because permanent residents have a right to appeal a removal order issued against them. So as long as they don't get 6 months of more than 6 months of jail, you don't you generally don't get it rendered inadmissible or deported just because of one impaired offense. That's assuming it's not impaired driving causing bodily harm or death. But generally on a first-time offender, you wouldn't get anywhere near 6 months of jail. It's usually a fine. Second-time offenders, it's minimum 30 days jail. Third time or more, it's 4 months of jail. But generally, those sentences would be well within 6 months, as long as it's not bodily harm or death.
Okay, which I've seen happening. I've had a case recently of a foreign worker come across my desk where he was driving, so he wasn't impaired, but they did charge him with reckless causing bodily harm, because the context was he was driving in the winter, and I think he was speeding, and then he flipped the car, and the passenger didn't have his seatbelt on. And so he was charged, and the person died, of course. So I'm assuming that this is going to be a bad one.
So just to clarify, reckless driving causing bodily harm or death is not an offense under the Criminal Code or Highway Traffic Act. So I'm not too sure whether or not you're talking about dangerous driving causing bodily harm.
Yes, it was dangerous driving. It was dangerous driving.
Okay, yeah, because for reckless, some people could mean dangerous driving, also could mean careless.
Okay, yeah, no, it was dangerous driving. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dangerous. Yeah, and was it bodily harm or death?
Death.
Okay, so yeah, dangerous driving causing death is generally a jail time offense, and it's generally quite high of a jail time. So depending on the degree of the responsibility of the offender, or the personal circumstances, right? The jail time could be less, but dangerous driving causing death, it has a pretty wide range. So when it comes to a foreign worker, they're generally quite.
It's a pretty no-no, right? It's a pretty sure. And then I've also seen tons of permanent residents with impaired driving, but then you said that if it's their first offense, they could be fine.
Yes, if there's
unless they were actually put in jail.
Yeah. First offense, you rarely see a first offender on impaired driving not causing bodily harm or death sent to jail. That's like, I haven't seen it yet. If house arrest, there are some jurisdictions could go very hard because of aggravating factors like community jail. But in real jail, no. And house arrest doesn't count as real jail in terms of immigration wise.
But if you're a visitor, foreign student, foreign worker, forget it. That's an offense, and you're done, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, often the times when it's a foreign worker or someone, if the facts are not as bad, I try to negotiate to something called dangerous driving plea, because dangerous driving don't have those minimums.
Okay.
But there are certain limits. So the readings can't be generally higher than 120. Our legal limit in Canada is 80, right? And when it's higher than 120, it's almost impossible to negotiate unless you have a very nice crown and very compelling factors. Back in COVID, as long as it was below 150, you could potentially negotiate, but they brought the standard down to 120 as per their manual at this point. It's not a criminal code per se, it's just a general practice Crown attorneys do that criminal lawyers would know about.
What other types of crimes could stop somebody from either getting their immigration documents, so if they're outside Canada, from obtaining their document, or if you're already in Canada, what could render them inadmissible?
Yeah, so for like people who are permanent residents, right? It's generally the most serious offenses, because the standard for deporting a permanent resident is essentially when the offense maximum is 10 years or more.
So we're talking murder. We're talking really serious crimes.
Yeah, but even then, you might not. It might not be for some people. It might not seem as serious. So I'm not only talking about murder. I'm talking about regular sex assaults.
Okay.
I'm talking about child pornography. I'm talking about refusing to provide a sample, which is treated as equally as bad as an impaired driving case, or if not worse.
Okay.
I'm also talking about trafficking, right?
Okay.
and
Which we've seen happen as well. It always shows up in the news. From trafficking, you're talking human trafficking?
Oh, human trafficking, definitely the worst, but I'm also talking about trafficking for the
Just
of
trafficking in
illegal
general.
substances.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. The human
That's
trafficking, we see a lot of for some reason, a lot of the human traffickers happen to be former immigrants who just want to take advantage of other immigrants, which is kind of crazy.
yeah. Yeah, so trafficking illegal substances like
Okay.
cocaine, all fentanyl,
Yeah.
all those scheduled substances. Criminal harassment is also something that
Okay.
you call someone too many times, you follow someone, that also counts. Assault with a weapon, assault causing bodily harm. So not simple assault, but like when you
Yeah.
use a weapon. So
Okay.
a lot of people don't know what a weapon means, but weapon doesn't necessarily mean knife or a gun.
Yeah.
Like if your pen turned into something that you're hitting someone with, that it can also count as a weapon.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
So
Um,
those are cases where a permanent resident could actually become inadmissible. But for a foreign worker, or international student, or just a simple visitor in Canada, basically what you're saying is anything counts.
any conviction that's not a straight summary offense. But the thing
Yeah.
is, those straight summary offenses I rarely talk about just because crowns rarely go ahead to prosecute those offenses fully that would result in the conviction.
Like
So,
what?
trespassing, for
Okay.
example, right? They might lay charges and then they do like something like an apology letter or a donation, and they get it
Mhm.
done with, right?
Okay.
Um, like something involving a lottery ticket or
Okay.
like nudity, right? That
Okay.
we are not really harming other people.
Okay. I had a client, I don't know where this falls into the scope of, because I know
yeah,
zero criminal law. I see I see the word crime and then I refer it to somebody else. I don't even though I find it very interesting and I love the world of criminal law, I don't know much. So I just right, I always send it to somebody like you or who specializes in this. So I had a case where a client just walked out of the grocery store with some products. So you know how the shopping cart has like the basket and then has the bottom part?
yeah.
And he didn't see he still had some products at the bottom. And
Hmm.
he went through the cashier and he paid for all his
Hmm.
items. And as he's walking out, the security goes, "Oh, you still have stuff down there that you didn't pay for." And he got, I guess, confused and nervous and started talking and forgot all his French and everything. And the police ended up being called. And he was in a total panic, like, what is going to happen to me? Like, he had just received a new work permit because we had just renewed his documents. And he was just in a panic.
Yeah, I so that charge is either theft under or fraudulently obtaining food, beverage, or accommodation. That would be the category.
Okay.
If it was a latter, it's a straight summary offense. So even if he was convicted on it, he wouldn't
Okay.
face any issues.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so as I said, these offenses, it's
Oh
rare.
no, we dismissed it right away. Like the
Yeah,
prosecutor was like, "I'm not wasting my time for
exactly.
$200." No, it was like for $35 worth of
Yeah,
products. Like they dismissed it. But he went through this whole ordeal, right?
yeah,
He had first he had to face the police. Then he had to there was a time booked. He had to find a lawyer. Like all of these things happened. Like he lost time of sleep, like his employer got involved. It was this whole ordeal. So at the end, of course, everything got cleared out, but it was a shock. It was a shock for him.
for
Yeah.
a lot of people, like
For a lot of people and other situations too. I've seen where like just an altercation between people, altercation between neighbors, and somebody calls the police, and that ends up, being in the record, and that delays their entire like permanent residence application because it gets stuck in the system being processed or something. So there's a lot of little things that I guess people don't really realize. That's what I'm trying to say. There's little things that people ended up like kind of falling into things. Things happen basically, and it ends up harming all of their applications, right?
Yes, and the sex related crimes are
Okay.
generally the biggest ones that people fall into that they don't know about, because Canada has a very distinct, um, not distinct, like they have a very long history in terms and case law of what consent means, um, the age of consent, and
Mm-hmm.
what's legal and what's not illegal,
Mm-hmm.
and for a lot of immigrants, that's when it becomes a really confusing area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've seen a few. I've seen a few. There were things between boyfriend and girlfriend. There were things where the person didn't, or at least they claimed that they didn't know that the other person was a minor, and then they ended up being a minor.
Mhm.
So I never really know the end result from these offenses, or I don't know if they're called offenses, but
Yeah,
these situations, because I don't follow the criminal side of it. But I just see people unfortunately getting caught in these contexts, which is not really fun. So we've already talked about how permanent residents can lose their status if they commit a crime. Um, we've
it's
talked
just
about
to add about that. So for the permanent residence, it's not only about the seriousness of the crime, but it's also about how much sentence you served, because permanent residents don't get right of appeal once the sentence
Mhm.
is over 6 months of jail, actual jail. So that's the key part, because it's being the offense being serious is one thing, but it's also about the sentence they receive to see
Okay.
whether they have a chance to appeal. So if you get like convicted
Even
on a
if you had,
serious,
so if you had an extreme offense, serious offense, but then you ended up not being sentenced to 6 months or more in jail,
yeah,
or you appeal of that and you won, then you're safe, basically.
yeah, exactly. So obviously for serious offenses, there's limits in terms of case law, right? But for ones that have the option of going under 6 months of jail, or composing a sentence that's very carefully crafted by the lawyer and the judge, it could
Mhm.
avoid. So I currently have someone who literally has two very serious offenses. One is generally 2 years of jail. One is 30 days. And I'm trying to do something that can retain his appeal rights by mixing the both of two and creating a 1 year jail sentence, but still avoids over 6 months.
Okay, interesting. So we've talked about, so the permanent residents were cleared, the foreign nationals, the visitors, the foreign workers, the international students. Uh, we've talked about, so the question is, can I still come to Canada if I have a criminal record?
So the short answer to that really is it depends, right?
Okay.
It depends on first of all, where does your criminal record arise from? Because if it's outside of Canada, they have to draw a comparison to the criminal code, because obviously every country has different standards, so they have different measures in terms of what might be a serious offense in another country might not be serious in Canada, what might not be a serious offense in another country could be a serious offense in Canada. So it really depends on what the level of seriousness of the crime is, and also how many years it has been, whether or not your sentence has been completed, etc. Which
Okay.
would be the short version of that answer.
Okay. That was my next question. Doesn't matter how long ago the crime happened.
Yeah, so there's two types of rehabilitation. One's called deemed rehabilitation, and one is called individual rehabilitation. So deemed rehabilitation is reserved for what I call the least serious offenses, which are summary offenses. If it's been past 10 years since your sentence has ended, so the fines have been paid,
Mhm.
probation has ended, you're deemed rehabilitated, so we can come in.
Okay.
But if it's not that, and it's a serious offense, so any offense that's maximum 10 years imprisonment equivalent, or so such in Canada, or over 6 months of jail, then after 5 years after your sentence has ended, you can apply for individual rehabilitation. So that's you're applying to be
Mhm.
to for the Canadian government essentially to assess whether or
Mhm.
not you have essentially turned your
You
life
could
around.
still come in despite your history. Mhm. Do
Yeah,
you see that they're generous with it? Do people generally get, their rehabilitation, or do you think they're quite strict with it?
I think they're very fair with it.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a case by case basis, right? It's like with almost a lot of the immigration applications that come through. It's a case,
Mhm,
like especially when it comes to sponsorships and stuff like that. It's a case by case basis, right?
mhm,
It comes down to like your stable life, your work history, and counseling you've done, and good
mhm,
character references, whether or not you
mhm,
have a clean record ever since, right? Those
mhm,
are all very much considered.
mhm. So what would you say to people? So, most people that I come across, most people that come across my desk, either don't have an offense or don't even dream to. Like they would just tremble in fear at the thought of committing a crime or doing something that would potentially put them in front of a police officer, right? That's a very panicky thought for a lot of people. But like I said, sometimes things happen. So what is the advice then? What would you say to people that never had like an ill bone, but something happens? What to do?
Well, that's a tough question.
Because that
So
depends on a lot of things, right?
yes,
But
it depends on a lot of things. So right, it
something
depends on
happens.
something happened. It depends on your situation. One, take careful notes about what had happened. Make sure everything you have from your version of events is recorded if you can. Like, don't try to like something we see often is they try to destroy everything. Right? Keep it safe. Don't give it to anyone, but make sure you have it in your safe
Okay.
record. Okay. Second is get legal advice as
Mhm.
soon as possible. I don't
I
think there's
thought that was
any.
gonna be the first
Yeah.
thing that you were gonna say. Find a lawyer. I
Yes.
just tell them just look for a lawyer. Like
Yes.
just
Look for a lawyer is very important. And third is don't tell the police anything beyond
that's a good
what is
one.
found in
Uh-huh.
your driver's license.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do
Especially
they? Because it is. Are they obligated to answer to the questions from the police?
they aren't. They have an absolute right to silence. You're only needing to answer questions that can be found on your driver's license.
Uh-huh. And people don't know that. They just blah 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 and just vomit all their information out. And I think in the quest to help themselves, the grocery store client that I had, I think that's actually what happened to him. He started blurbing things out in the nervousness, and that's when they called the police on him.
Yeah. So those statements are made without them knowing their rights, because when you're arrested, you're read your rights and you're cautioned to not say anything. And they said
Okay.
before that there's always a legal application. Anything you say to the police, the Crown has to prove that was voluntary that you said to the police to use it against you. But
Okay.
it's often what we actually see the case is actually they've known their rights, they were given their rights, and they still say stuff to the police. And it's really hard because a lot of our immigrants, English is not their first language, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what happens is they might not fully understand their rights, or they still believe that if they say something, they can get out of it at that time.
Exactly,
It's not going to
exactly.
happen.
They're acting in good faith. They're trying to explain themselves out of the situation.
Exactly. I can tell you right now, no matter what you say and no matter how believable your story is, if the police are going to lay charges, so they're going to lay charges. So it's better to get your lawyer to deal with this in court.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have to pull out the movie, speak to my lawyer. I want my lawyer. So that's the
Yes.
first thing they say, basically.
Even if you don't have a lawyer, just stay
Yeah.
silent. You have time to get a
Okay.
lawyer,
No
but
comment.
do not say anything. And you have a right to a free lawyer, what's called duty
Yes.
counsel at the
Right.
time of arrest, and take advantage of that, right?
Right.
But
Right.
do not tell the police anything, no matter how innocent you are. Do
All
not tell
right.
the police anything, no matter even if you have overwhelming evidence to prove you're innocent. do not tell the police anything.
Amazing. This is golden advice, people. So if you're listening, and I hope you're a person in good faith, but things happen. Like I said, I've come across pretty legitimate, good people that were just going about their day and something happened, and that jeopardized not only their lives, but their immigration avenues and their lives in Canada and everything. So this is brilliant advice. Anything else?
Nope. Just know you always have a right to speak to a lawyer. Always, if you're stuck into trouble, try to call the police first instead of trying to solve the issues yourself. A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time, that's what gets people into trouble, because they decide to
Mm-hmm.
take matters into their own hands because they don't trust the police or something. Always try to
Mm-hmm.
call the police when you can, right? And
Mm-hmm.
um, always make sure that you know your rights. You always have a right to speak to a lawyer with an interpreter
Mm-hmm.
to help you understand.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I hope people will like this information. Earlier in the year, I made a little video on my Instagram talking about driving under the influence. And you have no idea how many foreign workers, because I deal with a lot of foreign workers, like a
Mm,
huge portion of my clientele are foreign workers, either here in Quebec or in Ontario.
yeah,
And like they just all just messaged me like, I will no longer drink and drive, because in Canada that's a big deal, but in some other countries that's a traffic offense. It's
yeah.
not a criminal offense. So they were just in a panic that was, and then that's when I said, you know what, I need to bring in a lawyer to talk in more detail about this and to explore all these things. So follow the rules, but if something happens, don't say anything, ask for legal advice, and be safe. Thank you so much, Broqachel. If somebody wants to contact your firm, I guess we can leave here in the description any contact information. You guys deal with any type of criminal law, but you also deal with immigration law, and
Yes.
where the two converge. And that's the one thing, though, just to finalize, I don't want to take much more of your time. I see a lot of the times immigrants getting criminal lawyers who are not familiar with immigration, and then that creating chaos in their immigration life, right? So that's why I like the work that you do, because you guys blend the two areas and you make sure to do the best possible to defend them, but also save their immigration life, basically.
Yes, and our firm has many lawyers who are multilingual, and
Excellent.
so we have a lot of languages available to make
Mhm.
our clients comfortable in speaking to us.
And could you work with people anywhere or just in Ontario?
Yeah, we work all across Ontario.
All across. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again. And I'll see you sometime soon.
Thank you, Marina.
Thank you.
Have
Bye
a good
bye.
night.
You too.